Attention passengers, we have taken control of this aircraft. Cooperate and no one gets hurt. The cabin filled with screams and panic as three masked men brandished weapons, their eyes wild with adrenaline. In the chaos, no one noticed the woman in seat 14C who hadn't even looked up from her book. Captain Reynolds, forced from the cockpit at gunpoint, caught something in her posture as he was shoved past. The way her breathing remained perfectly controlled, the subtle positioning of her feet flat on the floor, ready. If you believe silence speaks louder than fear, type quiet below. The lead hijacker, a wiry man calling himself Viper, strutted down the aisle like he owned the world. "Look at all you sheep," he sneered, waving his weapon carelessly. "Especially you pathetic Americans, thinking your military makes you safe. Where are your heroes now?" He stopped at row 14, noticing the woman still reading. "Hey, you deaf." He slapped the book from her hands. "What are you, some kind of tough girl? Think you're brave?" Sarah Mitchell slowly raised her eyes to meet his. They were gray, emotionless, like looking into winter fog. "No, sir," she said quietly, then returned her gaze to the floor. Viper laughed, a harsh bark that echoed through the cabin. "That's what I thought. Another coward." He moved on, missing the way her fingers had already memorized the exact distance between his weapon and holster, the pattern of his movements, the slight favor he gave to his left knee. Captain Reynolds, pressed against the galley wall, recognized that 1,000-yard stare immediately. He'd seen it before, in Afghanistan, in men and women who'd been places civilians couldn't imagine. The hijackers herded everyone to the front of the plane, creating a human shield between themselves and the cockpit door. "The American government has 3 hours to release our brothers," Viper announced, "or we start executing passengers." Starting with the pretty ones, he grabbed a young woman by the hair, dragging her forward as she sobbed. Sarah stood slowly, raising one hand. "May I use the bathroom?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Viper rolled his eyes. Typical woman. Can't even hold it during a crisis. He nodded to one of his partners. "Check it first, then let her go. And you," he pointed at Sarah, 2 minutes, or I come in after you." She moved down the aisle with measured steps, not too fast, not too slow. The second hijacker, younger and nervous, checked the lavatory quickly before stepping aside. Sarah entered, closed the door, and in one fluid motion, removed the ceiling panel she'd identified during boarding as a maintenance access point. Her movements were economical, precise, each second calculated. She retrieved the ceramic knife she'd crafted from a broken plate during meal service and secured behind her belt, then dropped back down, flushing the toilet for cover. When she emerged, the nervous hijacker barely glanced at her as she returned to the group. But something had changed in her gait, still measured, but now with the predatory efficiency of a stalking leopard. She positioned herself at the edge of the hostage cluster, exactly 7 feet from Viper, 4 feet from his lieutenant, and 12 feet from the third man guarding the cockpit. Angles and distances that meant nothing to anyone else, but everything to someone who'd spent 15 years calculating kill zones. Viper continued his theatrical speech about American imperialism, growing more animated, more careless with his weapon positioning. That's when Sarah moved. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, real violence never is. She simply stepped forward during one of his grand gestures, redirected his weapon hand with her left, while driving the ceramic blade up under his ribs with her right. Before his body hit the floor, she'd already stripped his sidearm and put 2 rounds center mass into the second hijacker. The third man, caught completely off guard, managed to raise his weapon halfway before Sarah's third shot dropped him. The entire engagement lasted 4.7 seconds. The cabin erupted in chaos, screaming, crying, people scrambling away from the bodies. Sarah ignored it all, methodically clearing each weapon, checking vitals with clinical detachment. "Threats neutralized," she said to no one in particular, then sat back down in 14C and picked up her book. Captain Reynolds was the first to recover, his military bearing snapping back as he recognized what he'd just witnessed. He pulled out his satellite phone, punching in a number he'd memorized but never used. "This is Captain James Reynolds, Delta Flight 447. We've had an attempted hijacking. 3 hostiles down, eliminated by a passenger." He paused, listening. "No, not an air marshal. I need you to run a name. Sarah Mitchell, seat 14C. The pause was longer this time, and Reynolds watched the color drain from the federal agent's face on the other end. "Sir, are you still there?" The voice came back, shaken. "Captain, that passenger. Christ. Just keep everyone calm and away from her. We're scrambling a tactical team to meet you on landing." 20 minutes later, as the plane descended toward an emergency landing in Denver, a black Suburban pulled onto the tarmac. General Patricia Hayes stepped out, her Joint Special Operations Command insignia catching the afternoon sun. She'd been in a briefing when the call came through, had literally commandeered a helicopter when she heard the name. Sarah Mitchell, Ghost 6, the operator who'd officially died in Syria 3 years ago during a black operation that didn't exist. The woman who'd eliminated an entire terrorist cell single-handedly after her unit was compromised, then walked 40 miles through hostile territory with 2 bullets in her shoulder. The same woman who'd requested discharge after that mission, saying she was done with violence, wanting only to disappear into civilian life. As passengers deplaned, shaky and traumatized, Hayes waited. When Sarah finally emerged, carrying nothing but her book, their eyes met across the tarmac. Hayes snapped to attention and rendered a perfect salute. Sarah paused, something flickering across her stoic features, then returned it with military precision. "Ma'am," Hayes said as Sarah approached, "the DoD wants to thank you. There's talk of medals, public recognition." Sarah cut her off with a slight shake of her head. "With respect, General, I just want to go home. I'm done being a ghost." Hayes studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd given everything and asked for nothing in return. Understood. "But Sarah, why? You walked away from all this." Sarah looked back at the plane, where EMTs were loading body bags. "They threatened innocent people. Someone had to act." She paused, then added quietly, "I tried to leave it behind, but I guess some training never leaves you." Hayes nodded slowly. "What will you do now?" Sarah almost smiled, a tiny uptick at the corner of her mouth. "Finish my book. Take a different flight home. Try again to be nobody special." As she walked away, Hayes called after her. "Mitchell." Sarah stopped but didn't turn. "That young woman, the one he was going to execute first. She wants to thank you." Sarah stood still for a moment, then said over her shoulder, "Tell her to live well." "That's thanks enough." Word of the incident spread despite the government's attempts to classify it. Passengers shared cell phone footage of the mysterious woman who'd moved like water and struck like lightning. Aviation forums buzzed with speculation about her identity. The young woman Sarah had saved, Rebecca Chun, started a blog called 14C, about everyday heroes who choose action over fear. She never used Sarah's name, respecting her desire for anonymity, but she wrote, "She taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. That real heroes don't wear capes or seek glory. They sit quietly in seat 14C, reading a book, ready to stand when others can't." The blog went viral, inspiring thousands to share stories of quiet professionals in their own lives. EMTs, teachers, nurses, firefighters, people who chose service over self. Meanwhile, in a small Colorado town, Sarah Mitchell returned to her job at the local library. Her coworkers noticed nothing different about her, except perhaps she seemed a bit tired from her trip. She continued recommending books to patrons, organizing community reading programs, living the quiet life she'd fought so hard to earn. 6 months later, General Hayes received a package with no return address. Inside was a challenge coin, one of only 5 ever minted for Ghost Squadron, along with a handwritten note, "Some ghosts find peace. Thank you for understanding." Hayes kept the coin on her desk, a reminder that the most lethal warriors are often those who want nothing more than to walk away from war. At the Denver airport, a small plaque appeared near gate C-14, installed quietly one night by persons unknown. It simply read, "For those who stand when others cannot. For those who act when action is needed. For those who seek no glory in their service." Airport staff never removed it, though no one could explain who authorized its installation. Pilots passing through would occasionally stop, read it, and nod knowingly. They'd heard the stories, whispered in ready rooms and cockpit jump seats, about the ghost in 14C. Years later, a documentary filmmaker tracking down the story discovered that Sarah Mitchell had enlisted at 17, lying about her age to escape an abusive home. She'd scored perfect marks in every combat assessment, been recruited into increasingly elite units, and eventually disappeared into the black operations world where names ceased to exist. Her confirmed operations remained classified, but rumors spoke of impossibilities. A single operator extracting diplomats from an embassy siege, eliminating high-value targets in territories America officially never entered. A ghost who moved through war zones like smoke. The filmmaker found one retired Delta Force commander willing to speak, though only in shadows with his voice altered. You want to know about Mitchell? She was death incarnate when needed, but that's not what made her special. What made her special was that she never lost her humanity, never became the monster. When she walked away, we lost our best operator, but maybe that's what made her the best. She knew when to stop. The documentary never aired. The filmmaker received a polite visit from federal agents suggesting the story might compromise ongoing operations. He agreed to shelve it, but kept one quote from Sarah's former commander. Real warriors don't fight because they hate what's in front of them. They fight because they love what's behind them. And sometimes, the greatest act of courage is choosing not to fight at all. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud ignorance, and where actions define worth over words, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.